Cookies taste really good. They actually happen to be my favorite dessert. I mean, it is basically all of my usernames online. I just love the idea of taking a nice bite into a warm cookie. But what in the world happens if I eat 10 cookies, or 20 cookies, or 50 cookies? Well, let's say for example, we have little Jacob. Little Jacob wants to eat all of the cookies in the cookie jar. Now, everyone knows that there's no such thing as a cookie jar, but we are just using this as an example, right? And so Jacob, he wants all the cookies in the cookie jar, but Jacob's parents, they're like, no, you can't have all the cookies in the cookie jar. You can only have one. And little Jacob is like, this is so messed up. But the thing that little Jacob doesn't understand is that if he eats all the cookies in the cookie jar, he is going to get so sick. Look, this entire cookie jar, it can't even fit inside of Jacob. But the truth is that his parents know better. They know that he can't eat all the cookies. All that little Jacob is focused on is on the pleasure of 1 or 2 or 3 cookies. And he doesn't see the overarching harmfulness of eating a whole thing of cookies. You see, Jacob's parents aren't not loving him by not giving him all the cookies in the cookie jar. They are actually, in fact, loving him by not giving him all the cookies in the cookie jar. If they gave him all the cookies in the cookie jar, then Jacob would get sick, and then he would feel bad. And then, yeah. Now, the important thing that I want you to see here is that this is exactly how we can tend to live our life in relation to God. A lot of times, I decide for myself what is best. I tell God that I know better and that I need this particular thing to be happy or to be at peace. But God knows better. The Apostle Paul even says in Romans 11:33, "Oh, the depth of the riches and wisdom and knowledge of God. How unsearchable are his judgments and inscrutable his ways." So God knows that I don't need that thing because it will actually end up worse for me than good for me. And going back to the cookie analogy, God knows that I don't need the cookie jar because if I do get the whole cookie jar, it will make me more sick than I already am. Now, I'm going to come back to the idea of being sick later, but for right now, I want to turn to the book of Job to even more express this idea. So just for context, in the book of Job, our main character, Job, has basically everything taken away from him because Satan asked God if he could prove to him that Job was only loving God for the things that God had given him. So God allows Satan to take away Job's children, all his livestock. He gives Job's boils, and Job's wife basically tells Job to just curse God and die. But Job won't because he trusts in the Lord. And most of the book is Job just mourning, but then at the end of the book, God restores to Job double everything that he had lost, and the book ends in a great happy ending. But there is this one chapter in the book that I want us to focus on. It's chapter 38. In this chapter, God asked 77 questions in response to Job's mourning and asking God where he is. Here's just a couple of verses to put it into perspective. Job 38, 4-5. "Where were you when I laid the foundation of the earth? Tell me if you have understanding. Who determined its measurements? Surely you know. Or who stretched the line upon it?" In these verses and the verses that follow, God is being rhetorical, but basically what God is saying is, who are you to say that you know better than I do? And this isn't just for Job, but it's for us too. Think about it. How could God ask us for help if he is God who created all things, knows all things, sees all things, hears all things? He spoke and the mountains shot out of the ground. He whispered and the winds rushed mightily. He is God. He doesn't need us to tell him how to do anything. Yet this is unfortunately how we can tend to live our life sometimes. We can tell God that we know more than he does when in reality we have no idea. Now, how in the world does this relate to true love? Now, when I say true love, you may think of maybe about a Hallmark movie or some sort of romance comedy movie or book, but that's exactly what the problem that the media has today. They say that people or things can give you love, when in reality the only thing that can bring us true love and true joy is God. And so God taking away the things that we think is love and replacing it with himself is the most loving thing he can do. Because God is the fullness of joy, and at his right hand are pleasures forevermore, it is the most loving thing for God to replace the things that we think are love with himself. So the question is, why do we do this? Why do we seek for our joy and our hope in things other than God? And why is it so hard not to do this? Remember how I said we would come back to the idea of being sick? Well, we are born with what is called a sin nature. Basically, we are born sick. And this sickness is disobedience from God's law. And because we have disobeyed God, he can rightly and justly deal with us and send us to hell, which is never-ending separation from him. So right now, no matter who you are, because you are sick, because I am sick, you and I deserve to suffer forever separated from God in hell. But because of God's love, he sent his son Jesus Christ to live a perfectly obedient life to the God the Father, a life that no man can ever live. And then Jesus, living a perfect life, died a horrible death, the type of death that you and I deserve to die because of our sin. But he didn't stay dead. He defeated death and sin by raising himself from the dead 3 days later by his own eternal power. And now, anyone who puts their faith and trust in Jesus Christ and repents from their sin can have eternal life with God forever. And that means that you trust that Christ alone can pay for your sin, and then out of thankfulness for his sacrifice, you turn away from your sin and discontinue from walking in darkness. And so now, anytime you look at a cookie, or perhaps even a cookie jar, if you can find one, if they exist, you can be reminded of God's true love and the sacrifice that his son paid on the cross for your sin.